Hey, this is Aidan from Tactical Airsoft Supply. Today we're just going to show you guys a little V3 Aster install into an AK. So in the package, you're going to get first you're going to get the package. Everything's going to be in this bag here. We'll get some selector plate stickers, some trigger stickers, a little set of some extra connectors if you need to convert your battery or your motor, things get messed up. We got some washers. We have some anti-backlash stickers. I've already gotten a couple things laid out so that I'm ready to go. This will be kind of tied up. You'll also see there will be a pin on here. I've just covered it so that the customer doesn't have his pin out there. Okay, so I like to just kind of tuck my wires here, and then you'll push these guys through. Just make sure you're not pinching anything. Go slow. It should not be too difficult to do. On certain gearboxes, I know you'll have to do some modifications, whether you remove material here or maybe there's some extra guys in here. But most of the time that's going to be on your Arcturus or maybe some LCT version 3 gearboxes. So now that our Aster is installed, we want to make sure that it's close to this kind of gear as we can get, but make sure it's evenly spaced on all sides. So I just kind of shifted it up and forward just a hair there. Now you're going to take the little screw that came with it and put it through like that. We just want to use this little washer to protect the board. Then we're going to screw this guy down. You don't want to go too tight, but you also don't want to go too loose. Make sure that the washer stays centered while you're doing this part. It can be kind of a pain, but you just want to make sure that that pressure is even across the board. Kind of check that all the board is laying flat here. No wires are getting pinched. Now I'm just going to do a quick sanity check just to make sure our Aster is in fact working out of the box and make sure there's no shorts. Plug this guy in. See our lights here. This is your trigger light. This is going to be your sensor detection. Make sure you do not get any grease whatsoever on any of these sensors here. Okay, so quick sanity check done. Now we're going to get the selector plate ready to go. So you're going to need your selector plate. Clean this off with some rubbing alcohol. I wouldn't use acetone just in case that eats at the plastic in any way, shape, or form. Clean this off. I'm just going to blow it off real quick so that we don't have to wait. Okay, now you're going to take one of your selector plate stickers. You just want to make sure you clean that so you get good adhesion on your sticker. This can be somewhat difficult with gloves on. You want to make sure this distance right here is about 13 millimeters. Some selector plates you're going to need to chop off the excess here just to make sure it doesn't interact with these wires. So I'm just going to lay this guy down nice and flat here, and we want to make sure it's butting up against this little edge right here. So we should be good to go there. Then, just to avoid any kind of weird movement or anything, I have some UV glue. You can use any kind of adhesive you want. I just like to add a little extra to make sure that I'm absolutely certain that this will not move when we reinstall everything into the gun. Just make sure you're not getting any of it into these edges here or anywhere that it might end up inside your gearbox. So we're just gonna hit this with this light real quick to cure up this glue. This stuff's super fancy. You do not need this. It just makes my life a lot easier. Okay, now we've got our selector. You want to make sure that the inside here is nice and clean. This is pretty good, but I'm just gonna make sure that we've gotten most of these kind of little black flecks off of it because this side is sticky. So now that should be ready to go. Flip our gearbox over, quickly install this. You can line it up with this little gap. Just make sure, again, don't pinch your wires. Line this guy up. make sure that this moves freely. This sensor here is going to be your full auto. This one's going to be your semi-auto. So just kind of, you can check with your selector here. Make sure you put it in properly. Just triple check that everything lines up at this is kind of your safe position. This will be your semi and auto, or if you do standard AK, way opposite of what I said. So we just want to make sure that those are getting covered there. So we're good. You can, if you've got a lot of wiggle between all these parts, you can put some of these little shims here in between the teeth to make sure there's no wobble. But I find that most of the time you can get away without needing to do that. Okay. Now we'll flip her back over. We're gonna check one other thing real quick. You'll need to take your sector gear. Once you've shimmed it, this is gonna change, but just for the sake of the video, I'm going to show it unshimmed. But it's pretty difficult to mess up, especially if you are at least somewhat experienced with shimming. So we're gonna plug this in. See this little laser beam here? What you basically wanna do is use this little cam right here. It's this little point, and you want to put it in here, and you just want to spin the gear while looking from this angle and just see if it interrupts that light. You'll be able to see the light, and then you'll see as you turn the gear, it'll interrupt that light. We just want to make sure that's working. That's what's actually going to detect as our gear spins to make sure that our gun stops when we want it to. So it does look like this one's getting pretty good contact with that laser. It's fully interrupting it, so that should be perfect for this build. Okay, sometimes you may need to shift the board forwards, upwards, backwards, whatever. You can remove some material here if needed, but then I would recommend maybe gluing your board down with something to make sure that this board doesn't wiggle or move, because that will shift your positioning. In this case, I think that we will be just fine because it's all locked up against these pieces here. Okay, now we're gonna unplug this real quick. And now we're going to move on to the trigger. I did have a little burr on the trigger right here. I just removed that with a little file. Just make sure the surface is super flat. Clean it off with alcohol, same as our selector. Then we're gonna take one of our trigger stickers here. Make sure this also stays clean. Then I like to put just a little tiny dab of some super glue. Literally just a drop is more than enough. We just want to make sure that this selector does not move. I might have said selector, I meant sticker. Okay, now we've got a couple seconds till this glue cures, so I'm just gonna take a Q-tip real quick and just clean off this excess. It's okay if a little bit gets on top. I've found that that doesn't really interfere with anything, but you just want to make sure that this sticker isn't going to go anywhere. Then once you're done, just kind of clean that surface same as before. Okay, so we're gonna wait a few seconds for that to cure, so I'm gonna try not to touch it. But now you're gonna be installing your trigger into here. You'll see here, I don't know if you can hear that, but this trigger has some wobble in here. This is going to affect the consistency of our trigger. So this is where the backlash stickers come into play. I am going to use a 0.3. That's just from my experience what seems to kind of be the best. Also, this washer was a 0.2 if you wanted to know, but you can kind of use whichever one you want. You just basically want to make sure that that screw on the back isn't hitting and interfering with this selector plate. So add shims as needed to make that not happen. Okay, now we've got one of these stickers here. Make sure, clean this surface with some rubbing alcohol so it sticks. We're gonna put the sticky side down and install that into there. Make sure it's not sticking out the bottom. The trigger will kind of hold this into place, so it's not super important that it be perfectly adhered. Now we'll reinsert our trigger. Just do a quick check. We've got a lot less wobble now than before, but I think I'm still going to do one up from this 0.3. So we're gonna do a 0.5. And depending on your trigger brand and your gearbox brand and all this stuff, it's going to change. So you may not be able to follow exactly what I do, but also I find that usually these triggers are very consistent and they have lots of room for sensor detection. So you will probably be just fine if you don't install these. I just want to make sure that you have that knowledge if you need it. Sorry, this is difficult to do with gloves on. Just want to make sure we don't get any of this stuff on our hands. Okay, now we'll just push this guy in there. Again, just use a little something to push down on it, make sure it sticks. There we go. Now we've got pretty much no up and down movement. That's what we want to see. Okay, now we're just gonna test our trigger fitment real quick. We're gonna put this little spring in. This part can be a beast, but it looks like I pretty much got it first try. So now we'll just kind of actuate the trigger, make sure it's not hitting the board anywhere, which it is not. And we're gonna just install this real quick and just make sure that this trigger doesn't have a ton of side-to-side wobble, because that's also going to affect, and we don't want it to shoot when we're in safe or anything like that. So trigger's good. Now we're going to just throw a couple screws in real quick. Just to secure this. Then I'm just going to quickly install my selector. This is kind of a sanity check. I wouldn't always do this just because I've done this enough times. I usually don't need to do this sanity check, but we're gonna do it for you guys. So we're just gonna throw this on. Make sure this is nice and tight. You don't want any wobble whatsoever. You can choose whether or not you want to add this safety bar. I'm going to just leave it out just for kind of ease of installation. Oh, I want to double check. Make sure that these gears are lined up. Make sure that this gear is lined up. If you're moving any of these gears in the wrong position, then you're going to run into some problems. You also want to make sure when you actually assemble the gun fully, put this back on, but for the sake of this video, we're not going to do that. Quick little monster break. Shout out Wolverine for the sick cozy. All right, now we're going to throw our gearbox into our chassis here. Again, make sure you're not pinching any wires. Then we're going to just reinstall our selector. I would strongly recommend when you do the final assembly of this to Loctite this pretty liberally because it is going to come loose on you at some point if you do not. Okay, now we're going to put this guy back in. You don't need to over torque this for this part. I just kind of want to show you guys the basic thing. Make sure this moves. You can inspect your selector plate. You can see the blue through here. I won't really be able to show it on camera, but our selector is moving properly. Then I'm going to just go grab another device real quick and show you guys the programming real quick. Okay, continuing our video, I've got another phone here. What we're going to do is just plug in our battery. This is way better with your grip on and everything. I'm just doing this as a quick sanity check. You'll want to fully assemble your gun and reprogram it again the same way I'm going to show you now. So you're going to click add. You're going to see your device here. I'm going to enter the pin. I'm just going to do this off camera real quick for this customer. Now we're connecting. Okay, we're connected. It's going to go through a little setup process. We want to select, first it's going to do an update. Unfortunately, it does kind of force these updates sometimes. They don't usually take too long, especially on some of these newer models. We're going to do AEG. We're going to do another AEG motor. If you've got their special one, you can set this up, which can be super fun. Okay, Now we're going to go into the settings here. You're going to see these little dots. First, we're going to recalibrate our trigger. So we're going to press recalibrate. It's going to have us pull the trigger. Then we're going to push next. We're going to let go of the trigger. And we should get a successful. We have 378 levels of sensitivity. You can just do a little test real quick. Make sure that it's working properly. Then we'll do our selector. We're going to press recalibrate. We're going to do AK. We're going to put it in safe, then auto, then semi, and then back to auto. That's really important. So now you can see we've got our semi, our auto, our safe. Sometimes, depending on your AK, it might jump out of semi. What you can do is go into here and adjust where semi-automatic is with this little slider here. I don't know if you can see that or not, but you can adjust where that is. And then also sometimes you may be able to just make it really big, and then you'll just need to make sure that you go all the way back to safe before you go to auto again, and that will solve all of your issues. It's a pretty common thing with AKs. You can almost never get it absolutely perfect. So I think that should be everything. Oh, just a quick little thing. You can check your diagnostics here. Trigger pulled when connecting the battery. That's just because it was brand new, and there's probably light getting in the gearbox because we don't have everything all closed up. What you can also do is you go to this device, firmware version, update to the most recent version here. You basically just click on it and it'll install. But I think that is everything. We're going to now button up this AK and we'll show you a video. We got our semi. There we go.